Hi. I have a really, really important message for you today. And first, what I need you to do is take a really deep breath. And do your very best to be open and hear what it is I am telling you. I have never been the type of person that can stay quiet comfortably when I know that something is deeply wrong. A really good example of this that comes to my mind is that if you worked for a car manufacturer and you were in charge of the brakes, this happened actually not that long ago. You were in charge of the brakes and you knew that those brakes were flawed. You knew that those brakes would not work and that people would be affected, impacted negatively, possibly die from that bad part. The company who makes those parts knows it's flawed, but has actually manipulated that message into saying that it's a new type of brake and it works so efficiently and well that everybody's going to love it. And it's become the standard. And you're the person that's putting in that brake on these cars. What do? Do you speak up? Do you tell the public? We have these beautiful platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all kinds of other ones that I'm not even familiar with, to tell the public, you guys need to be careful. Anyone who's buying this car needs to be aware that the brakes don't work. It's possible that they could work on your car, but there's a really serious issue with them and a high probability that something bad will happen. I would like to think that I would be a whistleblower before I would be responsible for people dying. So that's what I'm here to do. I am here to, for some of you, confirm that doulas and obstetricians are at war with each other. I've spent the entire time that I knew I wanted to be a doula lying to you, telling you that it doesn't matter how you give birth as long as it's your choice. Saying that I support hospital births. And at this point, the cost of my silence is just too high for me to continue paying for. So, with the new directives from a few different hospitals about mandatory epidurals, I can't stay quiet about this. Because the thing is, it's alarming. It's an emergency and it's very serious. It needs to be taken very seriously, especially by those of us in the birth community. But the reality is, this has been happening for the entire history of obstetrics. This is not a new phenomenon. If you actually look at the history of obstetrics, where it started to present day, it's not a pretty picture. It's actually really horrifying where our modern obstetrics comes from. Pretty much all of our modern medicine has an absolutely tragic history. And I need you to believe me when I say that a hospital's number one directive isn't to take care of their patients. It's to take care of themselves. They are a business and they're a risk mitigation business. Now, this is not to say that the individuals within that system don't have integrity, that the individuals within that system don't want to make the world a better place, want to take advantage of you. That's not at all what I'm saying. There are those individuals, no matter where you work, that want to take advantage of people. Here's the problem with the modern medical birth industrial complex, is that the system is broken. The system is about efficiency, risk mitigation. Right now, if you think about it, forcing epidurals for the reasoning that it will make C-sections easier is nonsense, because people with COVID are not in surgery. So the OR should be available. There should be no reason why the OR is occupied, and their level of sanitation should be the same as it is with COVID. I mean, you're the way that you scrub in and sanitize for surgery is intense. And so it honestly makes no sense. The only way that I can make sense of it is if they're encouraging epidurals, or inductions, which all of those interventions raise your risk for a C-section. And I'm seeing lots of people say, how can this happen? How can they do this? This can't be real. They can't actually do that, can they? And what I want to say to that is, number one, no, they can't. I do not care what your hospital says. I don't care what your doctor says. You don't have to do a damn thing that they ask you to. You don't have to have an IV. You don't have to wear a hospital gown. You can eat if you want to. It will never make sense to me why hospitals won't allow birthing people to eat. Because I don't know about you, but I can't run a marathon without eating. I would pass out before I even got a mile, 2 miles. Birth is the biggest physical event of most of our lives. And the reason we can't eat is to make C-section easier. But it isn't that you can't. So many people just don't know that you're allowed to say no to your doctor. You are allowed to come to that facility with your own list of preferences, demands, asks, with the understanding that birth is the most unpredictable event that there is. And modern medicine, modern obstetrics, has tried to take this event that, even minus all of this spiritual opportunity that's held within, even if you don't believe in any of that, the physiological process of birth is not standard. It can't be standardized. We still don't actually even know why labor starts. We don't know what causes it. We don't know so much about the birth process. Every single person has a different experience. And this is nothing new. What hospitals are asking of birthing parents right now is nothing new. It's been going on forever. We were just all taught that it was normal, that it was okay. Firstly, we were taught that it was normal to birth in a hospital, that was standard just in case something happens. And I need you to hear me as someone who is deeply immersed in the birth space conversation. Those interventions cause so many problems that would not have happened had you given birth at home, with someone attending or not. Every one of those interventions, even just a simple IV, right? You think about hospital, it's synonymous with having an IV in your arm or hand or whatever. Even having that IV causes your baby to swell. And so they actually appear to lose more weight after birth than they actually would have had you not had an IV. But nobody knows that. Nobody's told that. You just go to the hospital and you get the IV, like it's just standard, right? They tell you you can't eat. The reason they tell you that you can't eat is because you might have a C-section. Well, C-section is local. The chance of you actually having to go fully under, where aspiration would be an issue, is so tiny. But they're asking you for their convenience to please go run a 10-mile marathon, go literally just sprint for the next 24 hours without eating, or really even significantly drinking anything. It's ludicrous. Induction is not labor. Induction is forcing your body. Your muscles don't work the same. Your hormones don't work the same. It is not labor. And it does all kinds of things to your internal system and to your baby's system. C-section rates in this country are over 30%. There's probably less than 5% of the population that actually needs assistance in birth. But let me tell you that that number is going to continue to go up, because the more we allow these interventions, the more we forget what physiological birth actually looks, feels, sounds, tastes like, and how to support people through that process, the more of us will continue to forget how to birth. We won't remember how to do it. We're already on the verge of that. And this directive to mandate epidurals has just brought to light everything that's already been happening. And this is not a conspiracy theory. A really perfect example of this is how many of you have been told you had a big baby in utero. It's, in my opinion, the number one bullshit piece that doctors give their patients, and yet almost every pregnant person gets that line at some point. I did. My baby was born 6 pounds, 6 ounces. Better start prepping for a C-section. We might want to induce. There is zero evidence to support that claim. There was a study done, and I can't remember the name of it. Evidence-based birth is a fantastic resource for all of these studies. It is a paid membership, but it is worth every penny. If you're willing to pay for a childbirth class, I would pay for evidence-based birth over a childbirth class any day. There was a study done where there were 2 groups of mothers. One group was induced for big baby, the other chose to wait. The babies were on average 7.5 pounds. There was like an ounce difference between the two. There was no evidence to prove this. If your doctor has told you that your pelvis was too small, that is an actual problem in a tiny sliver of the population, but it's a well-known excuse for doctors who want to just be done with the birth. There are obstetricians who have nicknames about, one of them I saw was C-section Sally, because she has these big vacations planned, and all of her births prior to those vacations are C-sections. And this happens all over the world. When I was in the hospital with my intestinal blockage during my pregnancy, I thought I was going to have to give birth in the hospital. And I was talking to this obstetrician who was just a beautiful woman. She was so compassionate. She's the one who held my hand and stroked my hair and talked me through my NG tube. She was one of the most compassionate individuals. One of her partner obstetricians was as well. And they were such beautiful people. And I know they wanted what was best for me. But they're in that system. She told me that even though she would never do a C-section on me unless it was literally life or death, given my abdominal anatomy and it being kind of a mystery what the hell it looks like in there, she wanted me to follow all the same rules just in case. It's outrageous. And on some level, I'm deeply saddened by this, first of all. I'm deeply saddened, I'm deeply disgusted, I'm deeply worried, because most people just don't know. And the reason they don't know is us birth workers are not speaking up about it. And the system, those people that are taking the guidelines from governing bodies that are having laughing stocks about home birth at their annual meeting. And that trickles down throughout the entire system. We can't control birth no matter how badly we want to. Birth is not an illness. It is not an injury. Our bodies know how to do this. And for the few of us that need help, thank God it is there. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those experts. I would not have survived with the birth defect that I have. I have other family members who would not be here if it weren't for modern medicine. And in those cases, it's so necessary. I need you to know that even if you feel safe at the hospital, that is the place that you know you're going to feel safe. Do your research. Know your rights. Please. And I just can't understand why no one's speaking out about these things. These things have been going on forever. There's so much of what we believe that's normal for childbirth that just isn't normal. That shouldn't be there. Most of us don't know how the actual physiological process of birth works. We're no different than a cow giving birth in a field. Like, there's no difference. We need quiet. We need calm. We need support. We need love. We need energy. We need time. And hospitals are taking those cows and throwing them through the chute. That's what's happening right now. Women and birthing people are being shoved through a chute and straight out the other side with absolute disregard for their entire experience. And then what about our babies? What's happening to them? Those babies are imprinted with that experience. They are also equally imprinted with that trauma. I could go on and on and on about the issues that may happen to the mother or the birthing person. But the other conversation people aren't having is what is happening to our babies? That trauma doesn't go away. And then when their caregiver is deeply depressed, deeply confused, anxious, suicidal even, why are we not having that discussion? And this has been happening for years. This has been happening forever. It rarely happens in home births. Even when things go wrong, it almost never happens in home birth. And there's a reason for that. I am not against the individuals within that system trying to do their best. But it's impossible to do so within the very system that's sick. It's impossible to do it. If you work at that car manufacturer and you're making that brake, the only chance you have of making a difference is leaving that establishment and speaking up. You can't simultaneously support the car manufacturer and be a whistleblower and speak out. It doesn't work. It doesn't mean that your buddies on the line are shit people. It doesn't mean that your overworked, fucking tired-ass manager is a bad person and wants people to die from these broken cars. But I can't stay quiet about this, and I know I have a few other doula sisters who are wanting to do the same, and I hope that this gives you the courage that you need, that this conversation can be compassionate, it can be open, it can be a dialogue, a give and take. I want it to be that way. But first and foremost, you need to protect yourself. Hospital birth is an entirely different experience. It is medically managed. And I just couldn't stay silent because so many people, most people just have no idea. They have no experience with what that's like, with the stories people tell. And in a climate such as this, hospitals are running full fucking force with the fear. Full fucking force with that fear. Into putting women and birthing folks into a fucking cattle chute and forcing them to get interventions that will end up causing a cascade of other problems. I need you to hear this. I need you to hear this. If you have questions, if you need help, if you need someone to help navigate this with, please reach out to me. Please reach out. I'm here for you, and I love you. I love you.